So let's jump straight in. I've already had one question asked of me via email, so I'm going to answer that one first, and then I'll open it up to anybody else who's got further questions. My eldest, who is nearly 15, is so aligned to my ex. Through so much manipulation and coercion, she has witnessed me being abused through narcissistic abuse, but made it to look like I'm the abuser. My ex uses my behaviors as a justification for being the bad parent. Um, for being the bad parent rather than the abusive parent. For the past year, on and off, my daughter has been living at my ex's. Communication with my daughter is there, but brief. Our deep bond is there when we have brief communication, or if it's meeting briefly, it's loving and genuine. The issue comes if she's living with me. This is when my ex weaponizes my daughter to extreme levels to cause and create so much chaos. And the key question being asked is, how can I maintain that so much wanted relationship that we both want? So this will be something, again, that I'm sure will be familiar to a lot of parents. A lot of this will be covering some common ground immediately. So I'm just going to make sure that I've got everybody in. Cool. So I think the first thing about this is the abusers. So the people who are alienating our children are master manipulators. They are very, very good at turning everything against us. And quite frankly, it creates an almost impossible situation for us because it means that whatever we do, they will twist it. So it's always deemed as us doing the wrong thing. So they are very good at making us look like we're being abusive rather than they are the abusive parents. And so the second part of that is alienators have a number of key triggers. I normally talk about 5 key triggers, and this is one of them. So when they see us having a good relationship with our kids, that's something that makes them upset or angry because their whole objective is to make sure that we don't have a good relationship with our kids. So if they see us having a good relationship, they will go to additional efforts to undo that. So it's a kind of one step forwards, one step back scenario, which is very frustrating for us and it's very frustrating for the kid. Another part of that, of what is likely going on in this scenario, is that alienation is very often fear-based. So our children have fears of the alienating parent, and they do this in a number of different ways. One of the biggest ways is they threaten the child basically to take that loving relationship away from them or to find other ways in which to punish them. Some of these things can be really, really subtle, some of them less subtle. But our children end up learning that they need to appease this individual all of the time in order to protect themselves and to have what every child wants of a parent, which is a loving relationship, because you naturally want that parent to care for you, support you, and look after you. And they will only do that, in the case of the alienator, they will only do that if you're doing what they want of you. So it's really a relationship. It's all about them, not you. So what's happening in this instance is the girl in question is adopting behaviors to protect herself from the alienating parent. And these are really coping mechanisms. And you'll see lots of ways that our kids do this. They might become rude. They might act entitled. They might reject us. And it's not because they want to be doing any of these things. It's just because that's what they have to do to keep the alienated parent appeased. And they're really scared, our kids, all of the time. They're terrified that the alienator is somehow going to find out that they're having a good relationship with us. So constantly they're trying to do things to protect themselves. So the key question behind all of that was what can you actually do? So there's a couple of different layers of this. I talk about 3 parts to alienation. So the first part is, who is the alienator? And what you'll find is a lot of these alienating parents, they're actually mentally unwell individuals. And people talk about narcissism or psychopathy, and they have some sense that this is somehow genetic. It's not genetic. These things are um, nurtured traits, very often that results from trauma earlier on in the alienator's life. So I would look up things like narcissism. That'll give you a good sense of who these people are, and layer in characteristics you know about them, and also think about what was the drama or the trauma that they went through in the past, because they're likely protecting themselves from repeating that drama. I said this is a very complex area. I'm trying to make it as simple as possible for you guys. So the first one is be aware of who the alienator is, the sort of characteristics they have, and then try very hard not to what I call prod the bear. So as best you can, don't do things that's going to upset the alienator, because they're going to attack. They're going to wake up. They're sleeping in the cave. They're going to wake up and they're just going to attack you, and they're going to attack you also through alienating your kids more. The second thing I would say is go and understand about alienation, because it's really important to know what your kid is going through and look at everything through their experience. So put yourself in their shoes, look through their eyes. And when you see the behaviors coming up, if they're rejecting you, if they're being rude, these are all those coping mechanisms. So you have to learn to look beyond what the child is showing you and be able to support the child. What they really want from you guys the most is unconditional love and support. And you can't treat them as if they're a normal child situation. You have to treat this poor kid reflecting the duress that they're under. Again, I'm making this very simple, but there's a lot that sits behind that. But it's really important to understand what they're going through. And then the third part is you guys. Now, this is an area that not enough parents really focus on themselves, because we all look at our kids and we want our kids to be healed. We want our kids to be in an okay place. But our kids are looking at us and they want to see that we're okay as well. And what the kids don't want to feel is like they're being stuck in a battlefield between the alienating parent and us. So if we are critical about the alienating parent, we're basically, in effect, keeping our kids in that battlefield position. If we are too defensive about ourselves, that's an inadvertent criticism towards the alienator. And again, we're keeping our kids in the battlefield. But also, we tend to get very upset by what is going on. And we will often demonstrate this to our kids. And we'll do things as simple as we'll go quiet, we'll change our facial expression, our tone of voice, we'll use different language. And if our children are aware that this is an upsetting conversation for us, spending time with us, then they're not going to feel as comfortable with us. So we have to learn, I talk about triggers, I talk about blockers, and I talk about expectations. And the triggers are anything that is still upsetting for you is something that you need to deal with within yourself. Anything that's blocking you from essentially moving through what is an emotional journey. So I use a change curve, which is related to bereavement, because it's a very similar experience for all of us. So we start with shock and denial, then we go through bargaining, we go through anger, we go through depression, we come up to acceptance. And the blockers are aspects of you not wishing to accept the reality of where you are at the moment and what is happening in your experience of alienation. And acceptance does not mean that you're giving up. Acceptance means that you are just dealing with the reality of the situation as it is today, but you are holding on to the hope that things are going to change in the future, because it does. And there's a lot of dynamics involved in alienation, and things change when you least expect it. Only a couple of weeks ago, one of the parents that I'm working with hadn't seen their child in pretty much 6 months, saw them once, and the child was going through a process anyway of standing up to the alienator. And in the space of a 2-week period, they went from no contact to one meeting to moving in with that parent. And this is also a really good reason for you guys to think about not waiting until you have that contact with your child, if you are no contact, and then doing something about it and then healing yourself. That's too late. You have to do stuff straight away, as in now. You have to be prepared. You have to be ready. So you have to heal all of these things inside yourself, as well as learn about the kid. So, so those blockers are you not wanting to accept some aspect of the reality of maybe not seeing the kid or the kid's behaviors. But again, this is you, that you have to deal with that so that you're not then sharing you dealing with your emotional circumstances when you're in the company of your child. And then expectations. This is an area where when our children are quite an early age, we create all these ideas in our heads about what their life is going to be like, what they're going to be like when they grow up, when they're 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, what our relationship is going to be like with them as well. And what happens is that when we experience alienation, our expectations are now out of alignment with the reality of what's going on in the child's life. And that's really difficult for us to deal with emotionally. So it's a bit like one of the blockers again. So there's a lot of things that we need to process and deal with in terms of our emotional set and our mental resilience, beside helping our kids. So that's one that I think, if there's a big takeaway for all of you today, I would hope that's probably the biggest. You have to really work on yourself so that you can then be in the best position possible to support your kids. It's a very long-winded answer to a very simple question, but it's not a simple question. None of these things are simple. So that I've got another question, which is, what would you like to tell us? What helped you to reconnect with your children? I've tried to follow all of the do's and don'ts with PA for several years, and still no connection. So again, I'll answer this as best I can, but with the caveat that every situation is unique, and you're dealing with the dynamics all the time of who is the alienator in your case. How bad is the alienation? So is it mild, so the kid is just a little bit difficult to deal with? Is it moderate, where they still see you but they're really quite difficult to deal with? Or is it severe, where they've cut off completely? Then you also have to look at your own state as well. So when I get asked questions like, how do I reconnect with my kids, a lot of that will come down to more of the detail that's related to, well, how long have you not seen them for? How severely are they alienated? What state are you, and are you in a position to really be able to start connecting back with them? Do you have contact with them already? So, for instance, some parents have text contact or WhatsApp contact. So there's some degree of contact that exists. Other parents, there's nothing at all. So maybe the person who asked that question, would you be happy to talk? And then I could ask you a little bit more about that situation.
I've asked because I've been alienated for 6 years and I have two daughters, and I have contact with one daughter, like really at the minimum with WhatsApp and dog sharing, but I have no contact with my younger daughter. And I've been following like every, as I said, every do's and don'ts of PA, because I've had coachings and stuff, and still nothing with my younger daughter, and no real connection with my older one, just a few words now and then. And they're already like 21 and 23, so no children anymore. Yeah.
And so you say the alienation started about 6 years ago, did it?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and was there a period? So this is something that happens quite often. I call it pre-alienation, which is very often alienation begins at the point in time that people separate.
Yeah.
But the alienators begin their campaigns in advance of that. very often because they think, well, we're coming to the end of the way, we're coming to the end of the marriage, so I'm going to start, putting my views across to the kids. And they normally do this way before we do. Did you experience any of that as well?
Yes, yes, I did. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you know how long that went on for?
Um, well, some things probably years, and more in a severe way, probably for about 2 years before,
Hmm. Hmm.
I I presume. Yeah.
So already there was a kind of a long period
Yeah.
where your children were being given a negative view about you, you being undermined. What was there anything particular about your younger daughter as to why she's more alienated? So, for instance, is she more amenable to being controlled, or did she have a closer relationship with your ex?
Actually, I think she had a closer relationship with me
Hmm.
before that.
Hmm.
Maybe she was more black and white, in her behavior, in her ideas about how things should be.
Yeah.
Maybe more sensitive. I don't. It's hard to say, but yeah.
Yeah, as I'm sure you appreciate, it's very difficult to go into too much detail here. But um, one of the things that might have happened is because we see this a lot. If you have a good relationship with a child, sometimes they become the target for the alienator because they're out to hurt us. They basically hate us. It's got nothing to do with any of us, by the way. We're all good people. The people that we married are the people who have the issues, and whoever married them was always going to be in the same, are basically going to be sitting where we are today. It just happened to be us. Um, so with your youngest daughter, it could well be that he turned more attention onto her in order to hurt you more. Do you have any contact with her at all?
Well, I do send her gifts like for her birthday and
Hmm.
Christmas and
Wonderful.
Easter. And yeah, I write an email. It has become less and less, but yeah, still do. But she never shows up when I pass the dog over. It's always the older daughter. She
Yeah,
never shows up yet.
it could just be that again, she might be feeling a lot more pressure
Mm.
than your other daughter. I would certainly keep sending emails, texts, messages, gifts, because the message that the underlying message that you're giving your daughter is, I'm there, I haven't abandoned you, I haven't given up. Uh,
Hmm.
Please, everybody, never say I miss you to the kids because it guilt trips them. Because they at some level are aware of what they're doing and how this is affecting you. So it's better just to say I love you, I'm thinking of you, rather than I'm missing you. But yeah, I would keep sending her stuff. The fact that she's not responding happens so much of the time. And what's really going on is that the kids will often receive the text messages, but they won't. And the kind of the logic in their head is, I can't stop my mum or my dad from sending me stuff. But when they reply to you, it's like they've crossed a line with this loyalty conflict that's been created with the alienator. So very often they won't respond, but don't stop sending the messages because we get a lot of feedback from alienated kids later on who have talked about their experience, who go on to say, look, the time that mum or dad stopped sending me those messages or stopped turning up at the doorstep or stopped sending me those presents, that was the time I felt that they'd really abandoned me, which of course is what they're being told by the alienator all the time. But what about your older daughter? What's that relationship like with her at the moment?
It's hard to say. It's very superficial. Is that the word? Like, I can talk about the dog and what I've been doing with the dog, and I can sort of maybe ask one or two questions of how she's doing, and maybe make a comment on something that she's wearing, or just saying that I like that, and you might say thank you, but it's like a 3 to 4 minute conversation, and
Mm,
that's
mm.
basically it. But yeah.
Yeah. It's very positive that she's maintaining this relationship with you because it's keeping the door open.
Mhm.
We see a lot of the time with alienated kids as well. Part of their coping mechanisms is not to share information with us about their personal lives. And they're basically told to do that by the alienators and say, don't tell them anything, don't you know? Because we never, lots of the parents who are on this call it, will be having different experiences, but it'll resonate with them that they will understand that their children can't talk about what happens in the alienator's house. And sometimes when they come to our house, it's almost like they're little spies, checking in to see what's happening and what are we doing and providing information to the alienator. But for you, Astrid, I think it's very positive that even if it's limited amount of contact, it's contact. And it's a foundation to build from in the future. And also she might be able to act as a bridge between you and your younger daughter. And I would encourage your older daughter, your older child to do that. But if your older kid doesn't want to do that because she finds it too difficult, I wouldn't push her. But you're also at an age, or the kids are at an age where hopefully they will start becoming more independent. And this can be that kind of early 20s can be a bit of a turning point for them feeling more comfortable about reaching out and having contact with you. And there's another bit I'm going to throw in for you, and then I'm going to go on to the next question, um, which is one of the challenges when you get to kids when they're teenagers is to unpick what is alienation versus what is being a teenager, because teenagers are really difficult people at the best of times. And quite often their mood swings, their unruliness, their rudeness, their rejection, that can be just normal teenage behavior. And it's really difficult for us often to tell. And also our teenage kids reach this point where they just think we're all idiots. We don't understand them, we don't understand their music, we don't understand the social media, we don't understand their clothes. And they basically start looking to all of their peers to learn about the world and get their advice and support and kind of the nurturing that they need. They no longer look to us for that. So that could be part of what you're experiencing as well. It's this kind of natural process that your kids are going through, where they just wouldn't look to you for that sort of parenting support that you might otherwise be expecting to give them. So I'm just going to throw in one last thing as well. Um, there, one of the challenges that we face as parents is the sense of grief and loss around the time that we're not having with the kids right now, especially when we're no contact. And that by the way, when we talk about grief and loss, and I was talking about healing earlier, that grief or that loss is very specific to us. It's a catch-all word, but it will typically have some specific resonance within us about what grief or loss means, and it's often related to past experiences. But if you can reframe your experience of alienation, and this is what I think is really important for everybody, is reframing it so that you experience it differently. If you think about the period of time that you've been going through alienation, which is quite long, you would have around this point in time anyway, you would be getting to a stage where the kids are going to be more independent. They are going to be, flying the nest and spreading their wings. And so not seeing as much of them would be a natural part of what would be happening with your relationship with them right now. And what happens to us is that we've missed that sort of natural conclusion to this point in time. We've missed those years, but we have to start thinking in a different way and go, okay, this is what some of this would be happening anyway. at this point in time. Them being a teen would be happening anyway. Them wanting to spend less time with me would be happening anyway. So I'm not missing as much as I think I am, and I need to start preparing for the next stage of their life. And I hope they will come back into your life more, Astrid. And there's every reason to believe that they could and should.
Thank you.
A pleasure. Okay, I'm going to keep moving down. So Lindsay, you were saying you're alienated for 3 years from your 17-year-old daughter. Um, I assume that's, yeah, you've messaged periodically, no reply to most, abusive reply to others, asked me for an apology. I gave it to her, saying genuinely sorry for anything I've said or done to make her angry or upset, but still no reply. My question is, should I send her a message saying it seems as she hasn't replied, um, but that she's not ready to connect, that I don't want to message anything that my daughter, my door will always be open, no questions asked when she is ready to contact me. Are you ready to, would you be happy to come on as well, Lindsay? Do you want to just tell me a little bit more about what's happening, and then I can give maybe a better answer?
Yes, I've had contact with my daughter periodically over the 3.5 years.
Yeah.
At times it's gone really well and I've been really hopeful, and then it always seems to just suddenly stop from her communicating with me then. The latest messages that have gone back and forth, um, she ignored most of them, but she eventually did reply, but just blaming me for everything.
Yeah.
Everything I had done it was wrong. Everything I hadn't done was wrong. So it's a no-win situation, really. And I've learned a lot, mainly from yourself, Charlie, over the past 3.5 years about parental alienation.
Hmm.
And actually, the situation is much more clear to me now.
Good.
And whereas like a year ago, I would have just defended myself and retaliated, I then changed tact and didn't do that. Because I could see what place she was coming from in why she was saying those things, you know?
Yes. And I hope you find that a lot more helpful. And this is this whole putting yourself into your daughter's position, which you're doing, and you suddenly see the world through a different set of eyes, because it's like, okay, you're doing this because you have to do this.
Mm.
And in fact, it's probably very stressful for her having communication with her, because she'll be afraid of the consequences of, what happens if her dad finds out. Because a lot of the alienators, they check telephones, they monitor stuff. So it's really terrifying for the kids. But also the I it, it's very difficult to tell what goes on in the background with why their mood is changing, and also her age will have something to do with it. It could be the age, it could be circumstances with her dad's mood swings. I think the thing you have to do is just keep, hold steady, just keep reaching out, keep the communication going as best you can. And again, it's the same stuff. Work on yourself, because when our kids stop communicating with us, anxiety and fear pop into most people's heads. In fact, there is something I talk about a lot. I call it the emotional roller coaster, where most of us will go through 9 emotions. So there's grief, there's guilt. In the case of women, there's shame, because the particularly other mothers don't appreciate what alienation is and how it's so different. And so they assume that you must be a really bad parent because you haven't got your kids in your life. Same thing happens to dads, but less so. We also feel a tremendous sense of powerlessness, because exactly as you're experiencing, Lindsay, everything that you do is being turned against you. You're being kind of you're being blamed for everything, but which I'll come back to in a second. We also feel a tremendous sense of isolation because nobody else around us understands parental alienation, and in fact, it's frustrating trying to converse with friends and family about our experience. And I would discourage most of you from talking about alienation to them because they just don't get it. It's just very frustrating for you. We also feel this enormous sense of injustice.
Mm.
We also feel anger, and then we get into anxiety and fear. And what happens is when we first start experiencing alienation, this is a conversation that we start having in our head. And it's put there primarily by the alienator. They start it. And this is the crazy thing. After quite a short period of time, we start self-perpetuating this conversation in our head. And then most of you will find you're still having this conversation in your head years down the track. And the only person who can stop that is you. So we have to be, and this is all part of our healing process, we have to determine that we're going to stop this roller coaster conversation and start focusing on what we can positively and beneficially do in our lives. And that's one of the really big things that helps us to get through alienation, because it starts creating mental and emotional resilience within us, which then helps us to help our kids. Just on the blaming you for everything as well, this is a bit of a slippery slope because our kids have it in our heads or their heads that we're responsible for everything. And very often when kids go into reunification processes, this is particularly challenging. You guys, a lot of you won't go into the reunification process, but it's kind of relevant. If you think about a reunification process, a child is being asked to have a conversation about the one thing they don't want to talk about, which is alienation. So I would encourage all of you to never talk about alienation to your kids unless they raise the subject. And even when they do, always stay a few steps behind them. So let them do the talking. Do not use it as an opportunity to address the injustice that you're feeling. You always have to keep your emotions separate from what's going on with your kid. But for a kid going to reunification, so the first thing is they're being asked to go and have a conversation they don't want to have. They're then being asked to have it with a psychiatrist or a therapist, which implies to the kid, well, there's something wrong with me because I'm having to go to a psychologist. Then they're put in a room with you. And so they're going to be talking about the thing they don't want to talk about with the person they don't want to be with and with a person facilitating it. And it tends to just go horribly wrong, especially because the psychologists typically don't understand parental alienation. So they take everything the kid is saying at face value, not realizing the kid has got all these protective mechanisms up. The kids are lying to them and they're blaming us for everything, which is where this long answer leads back to your case, Lindsay. So what I suggest to most parents is we are none of us angels and faultless. We have done stuff where we've made mistakes. And where we have done that, that's something different. That is called estrangement. So estrangement is where we have pushed the kids away, as opposed to alienation, where somebody has stopped them from seeing us. So I would look for the examples of estrangement that you might have unwittingly done and admit to those. So now you can have a conversation with your daughter about taking some responsibility, which she will value greatly because she will feel that she can start trusting you more. But I would kind of dodge the ones where she's trying to accuse you of things you haven't done. So let her talk about it, encourage her to talk about it, encourage her to talk about how it felt for her, what was her experience, but don't accept the blame for it. And say, but weave in some areas where you feel you have got some responsibility.
Yeah, I mean, when I say she asked for an apology and I gave it to her, it I've apologized for the times that I now realize I ended up estranging her from me
Hmm.
when I started defending myself in the past about things that she was saying that just weren't true.
Yeah.
So, and I genuinely meant that to her, that, I genuinely feel sorry that I did end up estranging her further from me,
Mm.
on the background of being severely alienated. Um, I can see why I did it at the time. It's human nature to defend yourself.
Yeah.
Um,
It's
but
it's counterintuitive, this stuff, because it's kind of you want to defend yourself, and this is where the injustice is such a big problem for us, because most of us think, oh, I want to correct the story, I want to correct the story. And I basically say to parents, you've got a choice. You can have a relationship with your kids, or you can correct the injustice. But you normally can't have both. But
yeah,
it's a normal place for us to be in.
I finally realised that now, and that's why it's taken me a while. But she has had the apology she's asked for,
Good.
but still, after that, Charlie, there was no response to my apology at all, and I haven't messaged since. So my question, please, to you is: should I now just still carry on messaging her benign things periodically about innocent things,
Yeah.
just chat, even though I don't get anything back, or
Yeah.
should I say to her, look, you're obviously not ready to reconnect. I won't message you anymore. I'm going to leave the ball in your court to contact me, but my door will always be open. I'm not sure which route to go down at this point, Charlie.
I would keep sending her messages, and even if she doesn't respond to you, just go with it. Just
Okay.
again, as I was saying, kind of stand your ground within yourself, and just once a week, just send something very simple, very innocuous.
But you know
Uh,
what? Can I just say that my mum, right at the beginning of this process, so about 3 years ago, uh, she sent my daughter just a single kiss on
mhm,
WhatsApp every Sunday evening at the same time, because Chloe had stopped responding to her as well.
mhm. Yep.
And Chloe never responded to those messages in weeks of Mum just sending that single kiss. Chloe blocked her. And then Mum texted her then, because she could still communicate that way. And she asked why she blocked her. And she said, "You've been spamming me. You've done my head in, sending me
Mhm.
these messages for the past couple of months." And it was so hurtful, Charlie. And if I continue to message, then what I'm fearful of is that I'm going to just push her away further.
Yes, I mean there is always a risk of that happening. Just very quickly on with your mum, and again, this will apply to nearly every parent who's on the call tonight or today. The alienators typically cut off all of our families because it's another way of hurting us. They're not necessarily trying to hurt our families so much, but we have to just recognize they hate us for what we represent, which are people that they can no longer give them the support that they need. So that's why your mum will have been cut off. Um, but yeah, it's unfortunate that your daughter chose to also block her on telephones. But the risk that you run the other way of not continuing to reach out to her is that she might then feel that you have abandoned her.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's a catch 22. I mean, maybe if you are very worried, maybe only send 2 texts a month, just once every 2 weeks,
Yeah.
and just make it very, very simple. Whatever, just talk. Ideally for everybody, I would say if you know anything that's going on about your children's lives, just mention what's going on in their life rather than stuff that's related to your own.
Okay, Charlie, thank you. I appreciate that.
And then Dina, what do you think of seeing the kids when they are, for instance, playing a game of basketball without telling them that you're going to be there? Sometimes their dad is there too, and I notice then that it's complicated for them. What is the best thing to do? Um, are you happy to talk as well, Dina? All
Hello.
right. Yeah, this is a very common question. Uh,
Uh-huh.
Again, this is kind of consistent. It's a bit like the text and the emailing.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I would encourage every parent to continue going and supporting their kids at, sporting events, concerts, anything like that, because it again reinforces the fact that you haven't given up, you're still supporting them, your door is always open. It can cause a degree of distress for the kids though.
Yeah.
And what we tend to notice is that when the alienating parent or people associated with the alienating parent, might be their partner, might be their family, is present at those events, you get a completely different kid on your hands. So
Yeah.
so basically the pressure is really ramped up for the kid at that moment, because now the person that they're supposed not to speak to and not to see is physically there.
Yeah.
So you might find that they act very differently when their dad is there. Do you have eye contact with your kids? Do you ever say anything to them? Do they wave at you? What's kind of going on at these games?
Sometimes they wave.
Good.
Sometimes I give them a, how do you call it? A wink of the eye.
Good.
And sometimes, just today, my youngest, he's 13. He said, "Mom, please go. Daddy's here."
Okay.
But I stayed. And
Good.
then his dad, he left. He was angry that I was there, so
Yeah.
he left. Yeah, it's always a lot of tension when we're both in the room.
It's so much harder for the kids when
Yeah.
but again, I would keep doing it because it shows them that you love them, you care for them, you
Yeah.
support them, that you haven't given up on them.
Mm-hmm.
Although
Okay.
quite often the alienating parents try and make it as difficult as possible, so they don't tell us when the matches are on.
Well, I found out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We tend to be quite determined people.
Yeah.
Um,
I'm calling myself Shirley Holmes sometimes.
Good. The other thing that I would encourage you to do,
Mhm.
um, how do you feel when you're going to those matches?
Um, the last year,
Mm-hmm.
I'm quite relaxed.
Good.
Before that, it was really difficult for me.
Mm.
But now I'm more quiet and yeah, I'm okay. Yeah.
Okay. Good. What I think you will have experienced by going along consistently is when you first started doing it, it was uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And that's because your subconscious is telling you, "Oh, I'm not comfortable doing this. I'm afraid I'm not confident. This is going to go badly." But you went along and you did it anyway.
Yeah.
And the more you did it, the more comfortable you became with that situation. And basically, you reprogrammed your subconscious.
Okay.
Yeah. And what I would encourage every parent to be doing is there are situations like that where we're thinking, shall I attend a game? Shall I not attend a game? Go to a concert, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Even going to court. And we're really afraid of doing this
Yeah.
because it naturally makes us nervous. And I would encourage every parent to create what I call a future memory. And basically, the way I'm not a psychologist, but I know enough about this stuff. With the way our brain works, our subconscious is full of past memories, and those are the kind of the go-to that our subconscious uses when we're thinking about, oh, when I'm going to go to a game, it kind of goes deep within us to say, what's this experience going to be like? And if we are uncomfortable, we're going to come back with a kind of a negative view. We're going to have an uncomfortable experience. And the thing that got you through it is you just doggedly determined you were going to go along. Something that works really, really well is to think about imagine in your head going to that game. Imagine how confident you are going to be. Remind yourself why you're going, because you're doing it for love and support of your kid. And remind yourself how you're going to feel. And literally just sit there and use your imagination and imagine being at that game, feeling happy, feeling full of love for your child, and everything's okay, that you're safe. And even if your ex comes over, you're okay, you're safe. And if you do that 4 to 6 times, you only have to do it for a few minutes each time. I promise any of you here, when you go to that game, you will feel completely different, because what's happened is you've given your subconscious a future memory that it will revert to when you're at the game. Because when you're at the game, you'll kind of say to yourself, well, what happens now? And if you're reverting to your old programming that said, oh, well, I feel a bit afraid and I feel a bit nervous, that's how you're going to feel. But if you're reverting to your new thinking, you're going to feel confident, you're going to feel okay, you're going to feel loving for your kid. And the process that I'm talking about is what you've already done, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so it's a great tip for
Yeah.
future things.
Yeah.
You know, and for all of you, especially for courts and stuff like that, or any conflictual situations of your kids or time with your kids, use those visualization techniques to kind of prepare yourself so that you're in a good state.
Yeah.
Because that will help the kids enormously. Is that helpful for you, Dina?
Thank you. Yeah, it is.
Cool. Keep doing it. Keep doing it. Your kids might not like you turning up, but they will appreciate it and they will know that you're doing it from a place of love.
Okay.
Cool.
Thank you.
A pleasure. A pleasure. Okay, we've got a few more minutes. Teresa, you've said it's imperative to greet your children daily to let them know you love them and you're here for them every single day. Showing up for them, showing up, it's our job. I completely agree. Would you like to add anything to that, Teresa?
Yeah, the thing is I feel as if how they, divide the family up, really. I mean, everybody is divided on their own. And even when they have the children are divided because that's how they're controlling them.
Yeah.
But so it's super important. Our kids did not ask to be born into this world, and certainly not into a toxic family system that they are now in.
Yeah.
And so it is so important to show up every single day for our kids the rest of their lives. Why wouldn't you check on your kids, whether every day, hey, I'm here. Whenever you're ready, I love you. My son doesn't talk to me at all, but I text him every single day. I talk about stories. If I do all that, that's going to be a record. Sometime when they come out, they can see that you were there every day, that you showed up.
Yeah. That I think that is a really good thing to do. It is keep that level of contact up.
And they want to destroy our relationship. They want us to not communicate. They want to have us hurt so bad where we're reacting to they create such setups for toxicity. And I did have a question on I say to my daughter, I miss her all the time, so I'm taking that one seriously, like
we all do it until somebody says don't do it. You wouldn't know.
I think I texted it in the group chat, the irony that that's what they use, fear, obligation, and guilt on our children to not talk to us. And yet us saying we miss them causes them guilt, and we're going to change that. But like the other end, they're just being tortured by it and controlled.
Yeah. And what was your question, Tracy? You said a moment ago that you had a question as well.
I guess maybe addressing, the most important thing is our children were raised in a toxic family system. That's kind of like my idea and approach that I talk to my kids about, is the idea of, talking about the dynamics that they were raised under. And then here's the healthy system. Here's the healthy way to do it. Or, oh, that's the old system. We ain't doing that, but how do we address our children's complex trauma while they're prisoners, because that's what they are. How do we address it?
You address a very good point, and I'll make this my kind of final bit for this evening. Apologies for everybody whose questions I've not been able to answer so far, but this is a really, really key one, Teresa. So thank you for raising it. We naturally, all of us, are very disturbed at the way that our children are being brought up by the alienators. It's very toxic. There's all sorts of bad behaviors going on. They're not really being parented as children. I mean, it's a mess. And we feel very strongly about that. And we want to be able to help our kids by teaching them what we think are good values, how to treat people, how to behave. Naturally helping them think about, well, at some point you're going to be parents. How are you going to parent your kids? Because we can't talk about alienation, we have to find different ways of parenting our kids. So basically, us as parents we've been undermined. So we need to move away from being parents and being more like coaches, so that we're guiding our children rather than telling them. And I talk about something called role model. And a role model has got two key parts to it. There's, if you imagine two streams, first stream is, who am I as a parent and how do I have to parent differently according to the experience my kids are having? So how can I give them the love and support that will help them the most? And so you have to change your parenting style. Second stream is you as a person and your personal healing. And I talk about universes. So I talk about the universe of you and the universe of your kid. And the universe of you has to be really, really healed for you to be effective as a parent with your kid. Because as soon as you get triggered or get stuck on one of your blockers, or you get caught up in one of your mismatches with your expectations, all of the attention comes off the kid and is now focused on you. So you're no longer helping your kid. So it's really, really important that you're healed within your universe. So the way you influence or the way you help your kids is you have lost the ability to sit them down and tell them about the values, the integrity, how to treat people, all these sorts of things that you want to impart to them. The way that you do that is you do it through being the person you want them to experience, because they will be influenced by who you are. Subliminally, subconsciously, they will pick up on this stuff. And you will know when they're picking up on this stuff because they will say things that parrot you, or they will take actions that imitate you. And it's not always immediately obvious, but it's a very powerful and proven way of having a very positive impact on your kids. So be really aware how you're acting. What am I saying? How am I conducting myself? What's the language I use? How do I treat people? Like everything. And you have to be very conscious and aware of who you are being with your kids. I hope that was helpful for everybody. I'm aware that we've just kind of touched the tip of the iceberg, but it's an absolutely enormous area. I will be doing further sessions, so there will be opportunities to come back, ask more questions. Thank you all for your participation in this, because it's really helpful for all of you who ask questions, for everybody else on the call. And also it's really, really helpful for other parents just to be able to listen to these conversations and see the parallels with their own experience. I'm sure you appreciate at this point in time that I can answer quite a lot in these sessions, but there's a lot more that's related to the dynamics of your specific situations. And that's why I encourage each of you to speak to me a little bit here, because it's much easier than a simple, a question. If I can get into a little bit more detail, I can give you a much better response. But I hope that was helpful for everybody. Thank you, not just for coming along for tonight, but also thank you for supporting the groups that we run. And I look forward to seeing you all again in future sessions.